So I got a good one. It is the top 5 Zelda games of all time. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and go first, and then I'll hand it off to Andres and then Mike. Okay.
Yep, sure.
All right, guys. So first things first, let me say that this is in no specific order. These are just my top 5. Okay.
Mm.
The first one I got to go with is the game that really set the stage for me with video games. This was the first game I ever got to buy.
Mm.
My mom took me to Target. It's my 5th birthday. And she said, you get to pick, any game you want. And I never got to. I'm the youngest of 3. And so when we'd go, it wasn't often, honestly, and you guys all know this probably back in the day growing up, that you got to buy video games. You
Yeah.
usually rented them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, well, why
Yeah.
buy them if you know you can beat them in a few days? Was always the logic there, right? You could rent more games and play more games versus buying one. But anyways, I knew exactly, of course, what game I wanted. And of course, it was the gold box. I wanted Legend of Zelda. And I was with my older brother, my oldest brother, and this is a classic story. He knows this. He told my mom, don't let him buy it. He won't get it. It's too hard. I was so pissed. I'm still pissed about it right now, just thinking about it. So my mom literally wouldn't let me buy Zelda. I had to get Adventure Island instead.
Mm.
I really didn't want that. I settled for it. And you guys know what happens. You buy a game, you come home and open it, you're screwed. You ain't gonna be able to return that. That's the policy. That's the policy everywhere. That was the policy in the 80s, 90s, so on and so forth. However, I remember my mom came in. She's like, are you liking the game? And I said, honestly, not really. It's not what I wanted. I really wanted Zelda. She said, you want to get in the car and we can go see if we can return it? I'm like, and this is me at 5. I remember telling my mom, like, well, they're not going to do it. It's opened. She's like, let's just try. So we did. I don't know what my mom said, but they let us return it. And I got Legend of Zelda. And I was so happy. Honestly, I was so happy. I very vividly remember that. So that game is very, very special to me, important. I recently actually replayed through Zelda. I think about maybe a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely loved it. To me, it still holds up in every way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very nostalgic to it, though. So, of course, the first Zelda, A Link to the Past, will be my second game. I get very similar memories of playing that right when Super Nintendo came out. The Light and Dark World, how freaking cool that was when you get the magic mirror. Mike, have you played this one?
Link to the Past, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure. You said you played 4, and I don't want to spoil anything.
I've seen it beaten, but I played it myself, but I haven't beaten it yet.
It is absolutely amazing. The soundtrack is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your different items you get in the game. The game's very special to me, and that's the common theme with really all the games on this Zelda list. So my next one would be Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time, yeah.
Ocarina. Have you guys looked up how to say that properly? It's an Italian word. Did you guys know that?
Really?
Yeah.
I'm learning that right now.
Look it up. So I'm Italian. I know.
You want to hear my take?
Yes.
My take is there are multiple ways to say many things, and that's okay. And I actually think the real problem is people that take issue with hearing things in a way that they're not used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
As someone who grew up in Florida, right? Grew up in Florida. My dad's from New York, right? My mom came from Cuba, right? So like I'm well acquainted with the New York accent. I'm well acquainted with, Spanglish, right? And the Spanish accent. And also like there are different here in Miami, it's like a melting pot of different Hispanic cultures. Like you have Argentinians, Nicaraguans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, Colombians, right? All over. And a lot of them have different dialects and different words and different ways of saying things. And all of them are different from Spaniard Spanish, right? They're all so different, right? And then meanwhile, I don't know how I sound, right? But, my understanding is that I don't have that much of an accent, really, right? I just speak like, American, right? But my point is that like I'm used to hearing things in different ways, and that's completely fine. So, Ocarina.
Thank you.
Ocarina.
I knew
Thank
what you were
you.
saying.
Thank you for being the voice of reason. So no doubt, I got that game day one.
Mhm.
Had it pre-ordered at Toys R Us. Of course, it came out in November '98. I had the collector's edition box, which you guys familiar with the N64 collector's edition box?
Yeah.
It's badass. Uh, again, my oldest brother, we got into it, and he stomped on my box.
Mm.
You guys know, like I keep my shit in good condition. I have stuff from the '80s that's in mint condition. So when that happened, I was obviously very upset. Still mad about that. But guys, that game really changed everything because it was like Mario 2D Mario to Mario 64 and 2D Zelda to 3D. That jump was amazing. The way they did it was spectacular. The soundtrack is so memorable. The dungeons, everything about that game, very special to me. And then my fourth would be Tears of the Kingdom. I feel like we've talked about Tears of the Kingdom a lot. It could be
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild. It could be Tears of the Kingdom.
Mhm.
That's the new direction for Zelda. I
Yeah.
love it. I love both games, but I will go with Tears of the Kingdom. And for my last pick, I had to think about this one because there's 3 games that could have been this last pick. But what I ended up going with is Twilight Princess. I absolutely love this game. You guys got to understand. And I don't know where you're at with gaming at this time, but when Space World 2000 happened, or 2000 or 2001, they showed a tech demo for Zelda running on the Dolphin, which of course turned into GameCube. And it was a realistic Zelda. And guys, it looked so badass. Like everybody was talking about it. Everybody. Anyone who was into gaming was talking about this trailer and it was like, holy shit, the GameCube could do that. It was extremely impressive. People were hyped. Okay. Fast forward 2 years. What happens? Toon Link. I've never seen the gaming community so upset as I did when that happened. Now, I saw it. I'm watching E3 live and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, like, this looks really cool. It looks like a cartoon. Yeah. Would I have liked the realistic Zelda? Yes, but I trust Miyamoto. I really do. I trust Nintendo. Trust this is going to be a good game. And looks aren't everything. Graphics are
Mhm.
not. It's always gameplay. That's key. That's what always matters. So we didn't get it. But then a couple years later, we do get it. And that's when Twilight Princess happens. So we thought we were never going to get that realistic looking Zelda at Space World. We thought, hey, maybe this is the direction Nintendo's going. So we got that. Then we got Phantom Hourglass,
Mhm.
same cell shaded. That was a trend back then. We're getting a lot of cell shaded stuff. And it's like, oh shit. I don't know if we're ever going to get that realistic Zelda. But when that trailer hit at E3 2005, holy shit. That was insane. Do you guys remember that?
You mean E3 2004?
Was it
The
4?
twi-
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
the first
4.
Twilight Princess trailer.
When people
They
were
kind of went for like the Lord
crying.
of the Rings sort of theme, and
Yeah.
like Link was charging into the sunset against the army of like
Yeah.
bokoblins on their hogs. Oh, that
I
is
rewatched it today.
it's a top 3 trailer of all time.
Yeah, I rewatched it today. I seriously got chills. I was like,
So
holy
good.
shit. It still gets me. And they did that trailer so good. It was the last thing they showed for that E3.
Mhm.
The music they used was perfect. And you're just like, wow. Like, I can't believe we're getting this. And that's why those are my top 5. That's why Twilight Princess got in. My honorable mention, of course, goes to Wind Waker and Link's Awakening.
Mm.
Solid list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike, you want to go next?
Sure. Mine's super quick, because
I disagree.
mine's a super quick. I don't have those beautiful memories that
In the interest of time, that's perfectly
I'm
fine.
old.
But I would say I've only finished 4 of them. I've actually played. I would say most. I think maybe all of them, except for a couple of them. Um, well, actually, I haven't played all of them just because I haven't played most of the handheld ones. You guys know why.
Yeah.
But I would say that the first one I would go for is, even if I haven't finished it, I would say Ocarina of Time. I am now playing. I bought the copy, and I have this little. Um, I bought the copy, and I also have the little device where I can actually burn the game to my computer to pass the file over, and I can emulate the file. I can emulate. So that's what I'm doing. I'm buying games and all of 3DS games, and I'm emulating them. I'm adding a texture pack to it, so I can actually paint it HD.
Yeah.
And so I started Ocarina of Time yesterday like that. Oh my god, this is
3D.
amazing,
Looks great.
beautiful. It looks beautiful. It looks great. I think I like the version from 3DS better than I like the actual one from 64.
Sure. I mean, it's got improvements.
Yeah. So Ocarina of Time, of course, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and then Link's Awakening. I finished that one, and wait, I finished another one, right? I finished 4 of them. Ocarina of Time wasn't one of them. That's just in my top. Um, the first Zelda game, because I did have the actual gold, the gold case in my.
Yeah.
I remember there is a story to that one, because the person who actually got me into Nintendo was my cousin. He was like a brother to me, and sadly he passed away. And it's weird because it's like a lost bullet got him, literally a lost bullet.
Ah, jeez.
And so he was the one who got me into Nintendo. I was playing Punch Out with him, Kung Fu, Super Mario. I used to just like walk across the street to his house to play his Nintendo system. And then we used to walk across the street to go into the pizzeria and play the arcades, Donkey Kong, Mario, all that on the actual arcade when they came out. So it was just 80s was the best. They were the best to
They
be a
were.
kid. And so I got that game from my dad. Brought me that game when I came to Puerto Rico for the first time. I was like, I didn't know Spanish. I was like in a different world because everybody was, different. It was a little more violent than I'm used to. There was this thing called Vejigantes in Puerto Rico that where the teenagers were dressed in these type of masks with these giant horns and stuff like that. Like they look like devils. And then they used to put a 2 liter a bottle in a sock and run after kids and just gonna hit them with it. I'm like, what the heck is this?
Hmm.
How is this like a game? And so my dad was here selling the house, and I went with my mom and my brother to Puerto Rico. It was like a different world. And I remember the first time my dad came to Puerto Rico, he brought my very first Nintendo set. He came with the box. I'm pretty sure it was used because it wasn't new. It was in a cardboard box. It wasn't the original box. It had the NES. It had the Mario game. It had the Zelda game with the gold one. And they had the Zapper, Mario and Duck Hunt, both 2 in 1. And I think to this day, I think that system used to belong to my cousin. And I think my cousin, just because we bonded over that, I think my cousin actually sent that his personal system to me in Puerto Rico. So it's like that's my little
Yeah.
thought. From that point on, I fell in love with Nintendo. That's why I to this day, you could tell. It's not not a
Yeah.
secret, you know. And so I think I already said my 4, right? Did I say my 5? I
I
think.
think that's it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So here's my list. I'm gonna go in from the bottom, right? So I'm gonna do 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, right?
All right.
My 1 may annoy some people, but I'm gonna go ahead. I wrote them down here,
Mhm.
but I haven't organized them, so I'm
Yeah.
like deciding what's number 5 right now of the 5 that I have here. 5. Anyway, uh, this is tough, but I think I know what the answer is. And it's kind of one of those things where like my personal excitement, they waver, right?
Mhm.
Like right now, even though I'm putting it here, my excitement for it is higher than 5, right? And so I'm putting at 5 The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask, it's just stands out so much across all the other Zelda games. And it's so cool. It's dark. It's spooky. It's eerie, and I love it. Right, but I'm not gonna go. We got other things to talk about. So that's my piece on number 5. Number 4, I'm going to award to The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess.
Okay.
Now, Twilight Princess, Steve, you brought up like that trailer back in E3 2004. It was amazing. I remember I was a little kid back then, like, and this is like the first game that I was like all in, waiting to hear every little thing, get every pic or image of it. I just looked at a million times over. I would just spend afternoons thinking about Twilight Princess until the day
Yeah.
would come out. Right, it was amazing, and when it was delayed, I was heartbroken. Like that's how it was back then. There was one time where like my stepmom was like, "Oh, I don't know if you get this game," and I literally said, "Let me get this game. This will be the last game I ever get." Which was a stupid thing to say, and that's not actually what happened. But back as a little kid, when your perspective is skewed, I was willing to make that sacrifice. I believed in Twilight Princess that much. So in hindsight, I'm only putting it at number 4 here. Maybe I shouldn't have been that, gung ho about it. But Twilight Princess, regardless, though, like it was an amazing game. It did overall, meet my expectations. I cried at the end. I loved the game. It was great. I do wish it was a little harder though, but whatever. That's fine. Number 3 is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, which is also not that hard. But the thing about The Wind Waker, it's actually smaller than Twilight Princess, which you could maybe argue like length is great, but I think sometimes there's something to being a bit more concise, because you know what, the Zelda game that I've replayed and beaten the most, it's The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and I think that should say a lot, right? Like I think that
Yeah.
that speaks to just its overall gameplay loop, its quality, how good it is. Let me hold on a second. I'm seeing something here that Nate's saying. I'm not sure. Yeah, Steve, you read it.
Yeah.
Um, but
Okay. Yeah.
anyway, yeah, Wind Waker. I think it's deserving the 3rd spot. Now, in the 2nd spot, this was initially my favorite game of all time, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I feel like I don't need to say anymore. Everyone kind of understands Ocarina of Time is like the GOAT, or was in the GOAT conversation for a long time, and for some still is.
Mhm.
And so it was there. Now, before I get to my top spot, I want to mention a couple honorables, right? I'm gonna put Minish Cap in there. I love Minish Cap. I recognize that this is maybe the only 2D Zelda I have in the list. It's not that I don't like 2D Zelda, but 2D Zelda is not on the same level as 3D Zelda to me. And it's just that simple. I've played A Link to the Past. I've played Link's Awakening. I've played every single 2D Zelda outside of Oracle of Ages in the Season, which I need to play, and I will.
Mhm.
So I think they're great, but 3D Zelda is just on their level, which is why this list is mostly just 3D Zelda. Actually, it's 100% 3D Zelda. Another honorable mention is Skyward Sword. Love that game, but it's just not good enough to make the cut compared to the others. Amazing story. But anyways, for my top spot, you might be wondering, well, hold on a second. There are 2 huge Zelda games that came out
Hmm.
during this generation, and neither have been mentioned yet. And there's only 1 spot left. What the hell? This is where people get annoyed with me. I'm kind of including them into 1 spot. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are just like 1 game. They're just 1 game to me.
Yeah, I was about to do that too, so I don't think it's
Yeah,
a thing.
yeah. Although I could maybe say add in the little asterisk that Tears of the Kingdom isn't actually even account in this list, because it's just not old enough for me to assess it. Over time. I think as years progress, especially with games like this, you need time to fully understand how good it is and how much you appreciate it. Like it wasn't until right before Tears of the Kingdom came out that I came to the decision that Breath of the Wild which had been out for 7 years at that point or something like that, 6.5 years at that point, 6 years. Yeah, so it had been out for 6 years at that point when I decided that it was my favorite game ever. That's when it went above Ocarina of Time. It needed years. It took me years to come to that conclusion. So I guess really, like, I want to kind of include Tears because it's so similar to Breath of the Wild, but at the same time, I feel like I won't be able to appropriately assess Tears of the Kingdom until years from now. And so, yeah, Breath of the Wild, though, is, I guess, my favorite Zelda game, which is odd because it's so different from a lot of the other Zelda games. And I recognize from a dungeon perspective, it's maybe the weakest Zelda, but
Mhm.
also it does something that Nintendo set out to do. They recognized that the essence of what Zelda is adventure.
Mhm.
And that's what Breath of the Wild nails better than any game ever made. It is the ultimate adventure game outside of maybe Tears, right? And so for that reason, it does that the biggest, most important part of Zelda better than any other. And it's a game that reminded me that Nintendo still has that magic. They are still the best.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Breath of the Wild is my favorite.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Both of you because um you guys already know me. I'm not a lore person. Never been a lore person. I'm a fun guy. Just like I love video games, right? And so throughout my entire life with Nintendo, yeah, Mario's been my main guy, right? Mario's not big on story. We know Princess she gets kidnapped, rescue her, moving forward, right? Mario 2, same thing, you know. Um, I got into the Legend of Zelda. I would say with the Wii, maybe that's when I started getting a little bit into the Legend of Zelda. But more, of course, with the Nintendo Switch, with Link's Awakening, with Twilight, not the Twilight Princess, um, the other one, the first game in the timeline. Um, I'm having a brain fart.
Skyward Sword.
Skyward Sword, yeah, Skyward Sword.
Okay.
So I basically started getting into the story of it. I know the gist and everything, but my question is, um, you know how people like, oh, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, DLC, one to another, right? Was there that same feeling for Majora's Mask from Ocarina of Time? Since
I would like to point out I was like 8 or 9 years old when Majora's Mask came out.
yeah,
And
so
also the internet was arguably kind of in its infancy.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
I agree. But to me now, when I look at those two games, I'm like, it's like I feel like I'm watching Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's like uh, they sound the same, they look the same. I just see that big giant ugly moon in the sky, and then there's a mask involved. But um, and it comes to, of course, story wise, there have to be a different story. But when it comes to the look of the game, the graphics are exactly the same.
yeah, I think there's something to be said about how digestible Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are, similar to Wind Waker, right? They're games from an older time where expectations weren't as high, and so the games weren't as long, they weren't as big.
Yeah.
Especially Majora's Mask has 4 dungeons. Wind Waker, I don't remember how many dungeons it has. It's not as much as others as like Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess.
Hmm.
They're quicker and easier to finish, and so it's kind of, I guess what I'm getting at. You look at like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, to really play and fully experience those games, right? Like, yeah, you can blitz the dungeons, but that's not really the experience of those games.
Hmm.
It's very different. They're not as digestible,
Hmm.
and so I think it's harder to sort of assess them for that reason so quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but I will also say there is nothing about Majora's Mask that I can remember where it feels like people were like, "Oh man, this is."
DLC.
Oh, here's the other thing though. I think there was never a debate. Like, yeah, obviously some people like Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time,
Mhm.
but I think it's one of those things where when someone says that, for the most part, they recognize that it's like, hey, Ocarina of Time kind of set the standard, but Majora's Mask is more weird, and I like it
Yeah.
because it's more weird, and so it's just more of like a taste
Ah,
thing, and
okay,
it's
yeah,
not like, oh my god, how dare you like Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time? It's kind of like, okay, I get that you like
yeah,
it more because it's weird. That's cool,
Yeah.
and so like, but with Breath or Tears, it's like, oh my god, Tears is not as good as Breath. Like that's kind of like what it is now. It's not like apples and oranges thing. It's oh, this is an apple. This is a bigger apple. Which one's better?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's kind of a little bit a part of the conversation now.
yeah. So basically,
Yeah.
Majora's Mask was just a darker game than Ocarina of Time was. So people like that darkness better in a way, right? When it comes to
I
the
mean,
story.
Ocarina of Time was still dark, but Majora's Mask, it was weird and creepy.
Was it Termina?
Termina, yeah. Which, by the way, when you think about terminal, anyway,
Uh-huh.
it's dark.
Yeah. It
It's
was
dark.
dark, man. It was dark.
Yeah, yeah.
There's definitely things that maybe as a younger kid for all of us.
I'm an adult.
I was
I'm
a
an adult. I
teenager.
don't want to see that moon. I'm an adult, and I don't want to play that
It's so
game.
Well,
creepy.
yeah, but there's stuff that you pick up on now. Like you just said, Andres, Termina being terminal. Like there's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
interesting undertones there that you
Mhm.
wouldn't get really as a kid.
Yeah, I would say Majora's Mask is darker, but there are some really dark things in Ocarina of Time, like the well. Like there's like blood on the walls and chains and skeletons, right? There's allusions to a civil war. Like it's not like
Mhm.
extreme. Like there are moments that are bright and cheery. Both games have bright and cheery moments, but there's also a lot of darkness in them.